All right, I guess we are live again Wednesday at noon with me, Nedim Ramic, Lunch with a Lawyer, I call this show, Mike, by the way. And today's guest is Mike Walter. Now, Mike is a Democrat for State Rep in District 95. And Mike's been a resident of Oakville for 32 years now, lives with his wife, Sue, of 42 years. Raised four wonderful children. He's a graduate of St. Mary's High School, and his community involvement includes Queen of All Saints, Oakville Improvement, St. Louis County Boards, and many more accolades throughout your career, Mike. This was a very, very bare introduction of you, and I'm gonna let you talk a little bit more about yourself because I think you got a lot of wonderful things to say.
Thank you, Nedim, and I do appreciate this opportunity. This is great. Anytime I can get my exposure out there to different communities, it makes a big difference. I want to start by just kind of explain a little bit about myself, my history. I'm going to give you 62 years in about 6 minutes. I was born in 1956, makes me 62 years old now. My father passed away when I was at the age of 4. So I was raised by my mom. I was the youngest of 6. My 2 sisters moved out shortly after that. And strapped with the situation where my mom did nothing throughout her life except a 6th grade education and was a waitress and tended bar. So things got worse and worse. I can say I became accustomed to having the utilities turned off and dodging landlords, basically. I went to 5 different schools from the age of kindergarten to 2nd grade, where I landed at grade school, St. Hedwig's Parish, which is in South St. Louis, where I lived until I was 32 years old. 30 years old, I'm sorry. And St. Hedwig was really a great opportunity for me. They kind of accepted me and helped us out a little bit. From there, I went to St. Mary's High School, another great move. I'm not sure how my mom could afford to do that, but I guess there's a little help. I know there was help through the parish, and then St. Mary's, there was no help, and which that has changed, fortunately. So from St. Mary's, I graduated St. Mary's. I went on, 74, I went on to vocational school, where I got a certification in automotive and diesel technology. Funny story about that is when I got out of there, I had a few jobs that just didn't pay very much, small shops, things of that nature, and I went on to the city of St. Louis. That was a pretty good experience. I decided I was having children, had my first, got married when I was 20, we had our first child, Nick, when I was 21, and I decided I need a better job, and I wanted to rely on the unions. I had people tell me, you really need to get yourself a union job where you could have good benefits, you'll make good wages, a living wage, and raise your family. And I started pursuing that and found out that if I was going to apply at the labor unions or any major corporations that were unionized, I had to provide my transcript from high school, which I could not get because my tuition was never fully paid. So about age of 21, I took out a loan. I paid off my high school tuition, got my transcript, and started applying. Where I was hired at Ameren, which used to be Union Electric, now Ameren, the electric utility. I was hired there in 1979, and went on to work there as a fleet mechanic, and then I also climbed poles for about 18 months. Decided I'd prefer to get my feet back on the ground. So I went back into the garage for Ameren, and from about 1980, I started getting more and more involved in the local union with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, where I took on many different roles, headed up the committees and was a shop steward for many years. Went on to be an officer on the executive board, and then in 1995 I was asked if I'd like to come into the union office, which I certainly accepted with open arms. It was great. I worked as a business representative in the office from 95 till 2010, I guess. No. I've been 2000 and, well, I don't know. And anyway, my last, I retired January 1st, 2017, where I had served as the business manager for 10 years for the local. And in my last 6 years as a business manager, I also served as an international officer for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers on their International Executive Council. Again, as Nedim said, I had 4 children. I raised all of them in Oakville. They did not go to the public schools. I was fortunate enough, and I say that I think Oakville has a great school system, Melville, but I was fortunate enough to be able to send my kids to Catholic grade schools and high school, and I'm glad. But if I couldn't have afforded that, I'd have felt good Melville School District as well. I have 9 grandchildren from the ages of 18 to the youngest is she'll be 1 year old October 1st. It's coming up. I left South St. Louis in 1985 and moved to Oakville, where I lived in Copperfield subdivision off of Becker Road, if you're familiar. I've pretty much always been involved in a community, whether it was working at the church, volunteering. We developed sports fields, soccer fields, baseball fields, built a concession stand thanks to a lot of volunteers and donations from organized labor and the contractors. I also served 16 years as the chairman of the Board of Zoning Adjustments. With that, I can tell you that we assisted in making a lot of improvements in Lemay and Afton area, where I got to know more of the Bosnian American community as they would come in for ordinances to make major repairs on the homes and things of that nature. And in many cases had translators. So I always supported that and I was never burned on that because of the improvements that were made by the Bosnian Americans in those areas, on those homes that quite honestly were sometimes in shambles. I served 8 years on St. Louis City Workforce Investment Board. Spent also 4 years on their executive board. I was involved in the Oakville 2000 study that took us about a year, where we kind of set out guidelines for the further development of Oakville, such as Cliff Cave Park was in part of that study, the extension of it. Very involved, obviously, in labor, so I served as an officer and on the executive board for South County Labor Organization, South St. Louis County Labor Organization, and that was since '92 when we established that club. I've been a member of the Oakville Democratic Organization since 1986, which I am still a member, obviously, and supported. And I might add, the Oakville Democratic Organization actually has their Oktoberfest meeting on Wednesday evening. You're all invited. It's at the Knights of Columbus on Telegraph Road. We encourage everybody. We're at a point where the Democrats, in my opinion, really need to get off the couch and get busy and get involved. So I encourage any of you who would like to at least come and see the club and see some of the work we're doing. I think you might enjoy it. I was a trustee in my subdivision for 26 years and presently serve on the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership Board, as well as the Industrial Development Authority. These are all volunteer time. It's my dedication to the community. Like I said, I've always been there. I've always been a person that has stepped up and taken some leadership roles in just about everything I've done. Question I get is, now that I'm a candidate, why? What drove you to do that? For one thing, I was retired almost 18 months when I was approached. I've been approached to run for office for a good 20 years. I never did it because of my time and dedication to my local union and the IBEW. But this is something that I decided I could do one more thing before I totally retire. And I do mean totally retire. I probably won't volunteer. Although I've been saying yes every time I'm asked to do something. I'm one of those people that just can't seem to be able to say no. But I said I would do this. I am going to step up. I think there is definitely a need for a voice for those who presently really do not have a voice in our capital. The imbalance of our government causes it to really not work properly the way it was designed to work, and I just really want to be that voice for working people, which is a wide range. I want to be a voice for those in need. For our education system, our schools are underfunded in the state of Missouri. We now are up to 24 schools that are only open 4 days a week in our state because of funding. We're in the Melville School District, for instance, we're having to transfer transportation money. Out of the foundation money, we have to transfer that to pay for transportation because the funding isn't there. I think we need to change the way we budget the school system. And I do believe, and I always ask this question, and I really started digging into it, whatever happened to our gambling money? The gambling money was supposed to, and quite honestly, the gambling money, the appropriate amount does come to our school systems. However, as that money comes in, they take that out of the foundation money and basically are robbing Peter to pay Paul, and our school systems are suffering. That money was designed to enhance our schools. We do need to keep up with technology. Now we also have the issue of safety. We're going to have to provide better safety in our schools, obviously, and which leads to many other things. So I really want to be a voice, and a voice for everybody in need. I also believe, and as just tied to that subject, is my slogan for this campaign is building bridges for better government. I think that we're failing to work across party lines. I am a Democrat, and there's certain issues I can't waver on. I feel so strongly about them. But I do believe after negotiating for 21 years for the IBEW, in the utility industries, I had 7 contracts. I know that when you go to the table on any issue, there's somewhere in the middle where everybody needs to land for the betterment and the welfare of everybody, or at least the majority of people. And I'd like to take those skills in Jefferson City. One thing, as subjects are brought up, I cannot always speak with a great deal of knowledge on some things. But my intent has always been, as I've represented members and people for many years, I've learned to listen, learn, and then lead. And that's what I intend to do, just like with the Bosnian American society and community. I have to listen and learn. And as I told Nedim and told some others at the Bosnian Festival in South St. Louis Carmel Park, I want to learn more about the culture and just different things that the Bosnian community needs. I can tell you with that, I found out a year ago that my daughter gave me an ancestry DNA test kit, and only because there was no real background. My mother was an orphan from birth, and my father, there was no real good history on him. Other than he came from a large family. So as I find out, I'm 73% Irish. Yeah. And so I've got about 23 or 24% German, and the others a little Scandinavia, and I don't know what all little ones are. But with that, as I do my history, my great-grandparents came over from Ireland and Germany back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. I think times may have been worse then. I'm pretty sure they were. But nonetheless, that really helps me understand the whole issue about immigrants coming into our country. And I wouldn't be here today if my grandparents didn't decide they wanted to come over and have a better life. So that that's really hit home with me. And so I think I do kind of understand that. And my background isn't one of being raised on a silver spoon. So my priority issues, I really want to work with education, which I have a lot to learn there. Law enforcement, now all of our first responders, we need to give them the resources to do what they need to do to keep us safe, keep our property and keep us safe. So, and keep our children safe. Working class is high on my list. Obviously, that's my life was about working class, about representing people, and issues such as the right to work. I absolutely will never waver on that. I'm seriously opposed to right to work. It does absolutely nothing for our state. Does nothing for prosperity and welfare of people. And equality. I think we need to have more equality on the jobs. I can't believe in 2018 we have two people doing the same job and one makes more than the other just because maybe it's a female. That's absurd to me, and I could never support those things. Healthcare, very important. I don't know exactly what we can do on a state level with healthcare, but I do know one thing. I intend to propose a bill, and I've got some people looking at it for me. Propose a bill, one of the first bills, one of two. One of the first ones will be to prevent insurance companies in the state of Missouri from denying coverage or exorbitant premiums for people with pre-existing illnesses. I think that's very important. It's almost inhuman. Mental health is a big one on my list. Mental health as it relates to drug and alcohol issues, the opioid crisis as we commonly refer to it as. I think it's a bigger issue than just opioid. But that is really, those things are really very high on my list. So with that, I hope I can get the support, and I would certainly enjoy if some of you would come out and learn a little bit more about me, and have the confidence that I am going to listen, learn, and lead, and I will be there. I'm always active. So I think that's shown in just the 15 minutes of.
You have just basically hit on a lot of my questions that I had for you, Mike, which is amazing. So you kind of saved me from having to talk a lot, because I'm usually the one talking a whole lot here, but this is amazing. So I will also put your contact information up later on once we're done with the show. But a couple of things that I wanted to note. You've talked about your seems your entire background is in labor, and when it comes to the Bosnian American community, in particular here in the St. Louis region, a lot of us in particular are the elderly, so my folks and folks of all these other Bosnian Americans that are my age, came over here and they were highly educated. They had professional jobs back home. And so when we came over here, most of them, because of language barriers, because of certifications, were forced into jobs that were labor intensive. So for example, my dad is now a machine operator, at a diversified foam factory. And I respect the fact that you are fighting hard and have got the experience to kind of represent the labor class here in the United States and in our district, basically District 95, because it seems to us that they're being kind of squashed from all sides, Your zoning experience, a lot of Bosnian American construction companies, and you kind of touched upon that. South City is a great example of Bosnian Americans coming in, taking an area that has not been doing too hot and kind of picking it up. And now you're seeing in your district, District 95 is, once they had established themselves financially, they move out further south. And I was discussing this with my wife the other day. Further south, that includes Afton, Bayless, Oakville, and kind of scattered across the South County area, but mostly in the South County area. Family values, raised wonderful kids, 42 years of marriage. Bosnian Americans value that family unity as well. And then you and I just touched upon it briefly before this show. Soccer. I had no idea you played soccer, man. I mean, as you know, Bosnian Americans are crazy about soccer. So talk a little bit about your soccer career here to our Bosnian American audiences.
Well, I never made it to the pros.
Oh, man. So that's why you're sitting
here.
Well,
the Steamers left and everything. I didn't even have a chance. No, I just really enjoyed the game. As I said, when I got to St. Helens grade school in the second grade, I the guys asked me about soccer. I never heard of soccer before, and started playing in the alley and became a great hobby of mine. Just something I really enjoyed. So I played soccer, grade school. I played a little bit of select ball, and through high school, I didn't go out for the high school team. Actually, at the height of 4'11" and 5 foot, my freshman sophomore year, I played basketball for St. Mary's, and so soccer really was it was a big deal for me, and I really enjoyed it. I played till I was 39, and my body just told me it's time to quit this game. So, it's been very enjoyable, and I wish I could get out there and run a little more now.
Yes, Bosnian Americans in soccer, it's kind of like a second religion to us. So
Yes.
a couple of other things you touched upon that's very important to my generation, and my partner's kids are in the Melville School District. We just purchased a house that's outside the Melville School District. But the point being, education is very, very important to Bosnian Americans. And you've touched upon the fact that you do want to protect and strengthen education system on all levels. A couple of examples that you've got going on for us today when it comes to the educational system.
Nothing in particular. I will be meeting. I am setting up a meeting to meet with some of the school boards, and just to learn a little bit more about that. Okay. I don't know where we're at. Some schools I know talk about the need for more computers and higher technology, but even beyond the high school and grade school and high school, I think we need to be providing more opportunity for people to get into the more technical aspects of continued education. So to even work in a factory today, it's high tech manufacturing, so you have to have some skills in that area. So I don't think we're doing enough, and some people can't afford to go to a vocational school or even a community college. There's got to be some ways, and Bernie Sanders, for instance, said we want to every child should go to college and not pay anything. Basically, I don't know how that works, but he had a plan, and whatever the details was of that, I'm not really sure, but I'm sure there's ways that we can assist people in getting further education. And you were talking about the labor organizations and the Bosnian community being kind of in that labor force. Something I was involved in, and from the very beginning, was building union diversity, and to bring in the Bosnians, the Hispanics, the African Americans, give them the opportunity to learn more about the trades, and put an end to the so-called prejudice that supposedly the unions, and they probably did 50 years ago, but this is a new day. And that program has gone on and is becoming more successful. And I'm kind of getting a little off the subject, but it's all about training in school and education. And so with that,
you're kind of touching upon a subject that I did want to mention, because it's kind of in the national news right now. Women and all the misdeeds that men have had before, and the inequality in the workplace, where you said, two people doing the same job, and just because one of them is a woman, and she's making less, and that's something that you really wanted to address and kind of put a stop to it.
It has to stop, and I think labor unions are a good example of what we can do. And I keep going back to labor unions because I'm so proud of what we have done in this country. Everybody gets paid equal, regardless if you're a man or a woman. Sometimes it's according to your classification or your certification, but you work toward those goals, and once you reach those goals, you should get paid the same as the person next to you. Not on the merit system, where if you're just really good friends with the boss, you brought him tickets to the All-Star game, you're going to one's going to get the raise. I've seen it happen. Another thing you had touched on, and I'm sorry I'm kind of getting off on this a little bit, but trying to build diversity within the Ameren Corporation. I was working with Ameren on that, and I found out, you were talking about coming over and education. I found out that they wouldn't accept, and I did have somebody from the Bosnian community come in and meet with us, they would not accept the education. So if somebody came in and said that they had gone beyond high school, maybe had in somewhere in Europe had a associate's degree, for instance, the major corporations and sometimes the unions wouldn't accept those because for whatever reason, and we knew that, you know, some of them are speaking 3 different languages and you know, are just really full of craft skills, and we weren't bringing them in. So I thought that was shameful too. I mean, that to me is also inequality, not just among women, but against immigrants and everything else. So it just that kind of hypocrisy or whatever, discrimination, it's no longer wanted or needed in our society. I think it's absolutely wrong. And the whole idea of what happened, you talk about South City, the Bevo Mill area, exactly. Might be what you're referring to. Exactly. And if the Bosnians did not move in great numbers in the Bevo Mill would probably be like the Dutchtown area is now. And sooner or later, I hope that builds up. But you know,
there are great organizations across the region that are working towards bringing in more immigrant forces that, as you see, have had great economic impact on the region in general. So that is all the questions that I've had. Mike, if you want to give the final shout out to our viewers and kind of tell them how they can come out and support you, contact your campaign, get involved if they're interested, donate, please let us know. And I'll also post a link towards the end with your contact information.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate that. One thing I failed to mention is about small business, which I think means a lot to the community. Is I can't say enough about what the Bosnians have done in small business. Right down the street here, for instance, Lima and Rivas. Small business is a big key also. You know, giving people that opportunity, whether it's, you know, something in the line of financial aid, getting into it. I know we have the incubator down this road here that's part of the St. Louis Economic Development, teaching people how to get into business, what the different things you need to do, instructing people how to do that, because not everybody is knowledgeable about it. So small business, I think, is a big deal. And also I want to mention something I haven't been talking a lot about is business in general. So it's not all about labor. If the companies I represented, those members, if those companies weren't doing good, my members weren't going to do better. And so it goes that way. That's the way life is. You know, there's entirely too much jealousy at times. And so I do want to work with small business as well as major corporations. But I do have an event. Well, first of all, I want to again mention about the Oakville Democratic Organization, which will meet out at the Knights of Columbus Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. Come on out, get something to eat, enjoy yourself. I have an event. It'll be a big event. October the 5th, Friday night from 5 to 8. It'll be at Operating Engineers Local 148 Union Hall, which you can see their sign off of 55 before you get to Lindbergh headed south. You get off at either Union or Rivas and go back the Green Park industrial area back there. It's called Lynn Vale. Don't have the exact address. You can go on my website and get all that information. And then I think that is the last fundraising event that I have. Act Blue, if you're familiar with that, you can go on Act Blue online and make a donation to my campaign. Just type in Mike Walter for Mo95. Excuse me. And Nedim's going to post my contact information. I'm on Facebook. I got have a website, email, naturally phone, and I give it all out there so people can contact. Okay.
Yeah, we'll post it in there once we end with this live broadcast. Well, Mike, thank you so much for stopping by, talking to our viewers. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. And until next time, just to give a quick shout out, next Wednesday, so that would be 10/3, right? We've got Court coming on the show, Court von Ostron. He's running on the federal level against Ann Wagner, and we are going to be talking to him live on here. So mark your calendars accordingly. Again, thanks for being with us, and you have a wonderful and safe day, okay?
Thank you very much.